I've been making Japan travel videos on places like Osaka and Kyoto and have been getting a lot of questions about Japan, and thank you all so much for sending them through. So I thought it would be a good idea to do a bit of a sit-down video and go through the top 10 things to know before coming to Japan. Timestamps down below if you want to skip around, or you can just relax and let's go through them. By far, the thing I get asked the most is when to come to Japan. And this is really going to depend on what you want to see and what you want to do. So for example, if you would like to see the cherry blossoms, they generally bloom from about mid-March till early April, or you might want to see the autumn leaves change color, which generally happens in November. However, this is going to vary greatly year by year depending on the weather. For example, last year the cherry blossoms didn't bloom until about early April, and the autumn leaves didn't turn red until late November, early December. So you really can't predict those things, so that's just something to note if you want to come and see the cherry blossoms or the autumn leaves. Also, the seasons vary slightly depending on where in Japan. For example, if you go to the top, to Hokkaido, spring is going to hit later on in the year and autumn is going to come earlier, and the summers are going to be more temperate. Whereas if you go down to Okinawa, you might not get such a variation in seasons. If you want to come skiing, winter in Japan is from December till February, and summer is from July until September. And it gets very, very hot, but there are a lot of activities and festivals happening around this time. But please do note, it's also the school holidays. In terms of times you want to avoid, Golden Week. So at the beginning of May, there's a number of public holidays that line up. So people generally just take the whole week off, and prices go through the roof and it gets very busy wherever you go. So if you can avoid that time, I would recommend doing so. A lot of people, right? This isn't even Golden Week. This is just a random Tuesday. Golden Week gets a little busier. I just wanted to give you an idea of the scale. Another one would be rainy season, which is generally from mid-June till early July, just because it's very humid and the weather's quite unpredictable with like torrential rains and typhoons, which can cause a lot of cancellations for like flights and Shinkansens, and can cause just a bit of a headache if you're traveling. Another one to note would be New Year's. New Year's is a very big celebration in Japan, so a lot of people take time off to be with their families, so you're going to have a lot of places that are closed during that time of the year. However, there's also a lot of really beautiful cultural things happening at that time, including Hatsumode, which is when people make the first pilgrimage of the year to a temple or shrine. So you really got to weigh up the pros and cons for that one. My personal favourite times of the year to come would be May and October, just because the climate is very temperate at that time. It's quite warm during the days, there's not too much rain generally, and it's not as busy as the peak seasons. Number 2, how long to go for? For a first time, I think 2 weeks is a good amount of time to go. You can obviously stay for longer if you'd like to. There's so much to do, it's never going to feel like it's enough. But to avoid overwhelming yourself, I think 2 weeks is a good place to start. Obviously, this is also going to depend on where you plan on going, and I'll touch on where to go a little bit later on. Number 3, things to do before arriving in Japan. There's 2 things that I would recommend considering before arriving in Japan. Number 1, installing an eSIM. That way, as soon as you arrive in Japan, you can have access to mobile data straight away. If you're confused and you don't know where to start with getting an eSIM, let me recommend the sponsor of this video, Airalo. If you're not familiar, an eSIM is basically a digital SIM card. This just means that you don't have to have a physical SIM card when you go traveling overseas to connect to the mobile network. You can just download it. Airalo is an eSIM provider that offer data packages in over 200 countries and regions, not just Japan. So to get an eSIM, you're going to want to activate it while you're in your home country before you come to Japan, just because you want to have an internet connection for this part. It's super straightforward to do, I'll walk you through it. But just something to note, not all phones are going to be compatible with an eSIM, so just double check before you purchase it. You start by installing the Airalo app on your phone and selecting the SIM card for your destination. My phone has an Australian SIM card in it, so I would select Japan when I'm traveling here. There's a range of plans you can choose from depending on how much data you think you're going to need. I generally find 10 gigabytes is enough for like a 2 or 3 week trip, but if you think you're going to be watching a lot of videos or downloading stuff, you might need more, I don't know. Once you've purchased it, you install it onto the device, just follow the steps on the screen. I would recommend labeling your eSIM so that you don't get confused, maybe like Japan eSIM or something like that. And then once you arrive at your destination, you go into your phone settings. mobile and then you turn off your home SIM card and turn on Airalo. Also make sure that data roaming is turned on as well. And then just give it a moment and it'll pop up in the top right hand corner that you have connection, and that's it. You're good to go. Honestly, ever since I've switched to eSIMs, it's just made coming to Japan so much easier, one less thing to think about. So if you would like to get started with Airalo as well, you can use my discount code SUNNY to get an extra $3 off. You can check it out through this QR code here, or information will be down in the description below. Thanks again to Airalo for sponsoring this video. Number 2 would be to have a card that you can use to withdraw money at a convenience store ATM here in Japan that has minimal ATM fees and a competitive exchange rate, because you are going to need cash in Japan. Number 4, arriving in Japan. If you're coming to Japan, you're probably flying to Tokyo, and Tokyo has 2 airports, Narita and Haneda. Narita is about 1 and a bit hours outside of Tokyo, whereas Haneda is very close to central Tokyo. So if you can choose, I would recommend flying into Haneda, although I know that's not an option for everywhere. If you are flying to Narita, there are trains such as the Narita Express, buses and taxis you can take to get into Tokyo. On the other hand, if you're flying to Haneda, it's a very easy train ride to places like Shinagawa, Shinjuku, and Tokyo, so it's very convenient. If, on the other hand, you're flying into the Kansai region, you've got the Kansai airport, but you also have the Itami airport, which is a similar situation. Kansai is a little bit out of Osaka and Kyoto, but there is an express train that will get you there. On the other hand, Itami is very, very close to Osaka. Another thing to consider if you are flying in is to use the airport luggage delivery service. You can literally give them your suitcase and they will ship it to your accommodation so that you can ride the train in peace. Another thing to do when you arrive in Japan is to get a digital IC card. IC cards are used for riding public transport, and generally you have a physical IC card, but I would recommend getting it on your phone if you have an iPhone. That way you don't have to top up at the machine, which can get quite busy. You can just use Apple Pay to top up on your phone. Personally, I had issues topping up the IC card using a Visa card, although MasterCard and Amex seem to work fine. So could be a me problem, but just something to know. Number 5, language. Another thing I get asked pretty often is, how easy is it to get around Japan with limited Japanese? And to be honest, if you're traveling to big cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto, it's not too difficult to get around just because a lot of the signage is in English as well as in Japanese. Also, a lot of the establishments around the really popular tourist attractions, such as the restaurants and the hotels, are also pretty well equipped to handle English as well as other languages. On the other hand, if you plan on exploring more local or rural areas, it might be a different story. There will probably be limited English in a lot of these places. But whether you're going rural or to just the big cities, I definitely recommend having Google Translate or some equivalent with you on hand so that you can take photos to translate things or communicate with the locals. I would also recommend learning at least some basic phrases before you go. I'll put some here on the screen that I think are a good starting point, but you can also obviously build on it. Number 6, manners. Japan greatly values social harmony and mutual respect and consideration, and so a lot of the etiquette and rules will reflect this. Some big ones would include not speaking loudly in public, especially not on the train, making sure your luggage or personal belongings are not getting in the way of anyone on a busy train, not eating and walking, especially in crowded places, and stuff like that. There's also a lot of food-related etiquette, such as not sticking your chopsticks vertically into a bowl of rice. I think that's something that's done at funerals, which is why it's kind of frowned upon in everyday life. I'll put some big ones up on the screen, but honestly, I don't think anyone is expecting visitors to be aware of all the host country's rules and customs. I think it's more just a matter of using your common sense and showing respect to the host country. Obviously, I'm not Japanese, but my husband is, so let me get Kay's perspective on the matter. What rules and manners do you think it's important for visitors to be aware of before they come to Japan?
常に周りの人を考えて、周りの人に迷惑をかけないように過ごす。やっぱちょっとでも日本語を話そうとしてる方が好感は持たれるような。もう当たり前のように英語で話されたら、ここ日本なんですけどってなると思うで。
There you go. You heard it here first. Where to go. If it's your first time, you're most likely going to Tokyo, in which case you've got a few options to stay at. If you like the hustle and bustle, consider staying in either Shinjuku or Shibuya. This has been my go-to place to book accommodation over the years when I do visit Tokyo because it's just so convenient. But it is a lot of people, so it can be quite overwhelming, and if you don't like crowds, this one might not be the place for you. For my parents who are visiting Japan for their first time this year, I recommended Ginza or Asakusa. Ginza is a shopping district that is very, very close to Tokyo Station, so it's very convenient, but it is a little bit upmarket, whereas on the other hand, you've got Asakusa, which is a little bit out of the way, but it's where you'll find Sensoji Temple, which is a very, very popular temple in Tokyo, and it's just a very nice vibe in that general neighborhood, so that's another great option. I would also recommend exploring the Kansai region. So Tokyo is located in the Kanto region of that main island of Japan, Honshu, and then in the Kansai region is where you will find places like Osaka, Kyoto, Nara, and Kobe. If you do plan on exploring the Kansai region, I would recommend staying in Osaka and then taking day trips out to Nara, Kyoto, or Kobe, just because it's so well connected and so central, and you can get to each of those locations by train within like 30 minutes to an hour. Another thing I would recommend is staying at a ryokan, which is a traditional Japanese inn. Generally, it's in a tatami room with a futon bed, although some of the more modern ones will have Western bed options available. It'll include a beautiful Japanese style dinner as well as an onsen. With these, you can choose to have ones that have public onsens or private onsens, depending on your price range. But it's definitely a very, very unique Japanese experience that I would recommend for everyone. In terms of where to book a ryokan, you have a few options across the whole of Japan. Obviously, you want to pick somewhere that has hot spring water beneath you so you can actually have an onsen. So maybe somewhere around Mount Fuji, such as Yamanashi or Shizuoka prefectures, because that way you might also have a nice view of Mount Fuji from your hotel. So I've mentioned Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto as three great places, but most people coming for the first time will be looking at going to those three places, and because Japan is on, it seems, everyone's bucket list this year, and for good reason, it's going to get very busy in those places. Now, if crowds are not really your thing, then I would recommend considering exploring outside of those areas and going instead to places like Shiga Prefecture, which is also in the Kansai region and very, very close to Kyoto. It's got beautiful, beautiful temples and nature, as well as cute little Japanese traditional towns that feel like you've stepped back in time. Or perhaps somewhere like Hiroshima, as well as Miyajima, the island with the torii gate in the water, and all the deer that inhabit that island. Alternatively, you can go to Hokkaido, which is the island in the north. It's very pleasant here in summer. I haven't been yet, but it's on my bucket list. And you've got Kyushu in the west, which if you can get out there, I highly, highly recommend visiting Fukuoka. It is such a gem of a city. It's got an amazing food scene, amazing cafe scene, amazing night scene. The ramen is to die for. So yeah, if you do get a chance to go out there, I'd really recommend that one. Okay, so now that you've got a list of places that you want to go and you've kind of got an idea of when you might be going, it's important to consider that some of these places might be more suited to certain times of the year or more seasonal locations. For example, if you want to go see the snow monkeys in Nagano, you need to do that in winter. Another example would be the fact that Kyoto, which has a lot of temples and shrines, is absolutely, absolutely beautiful during spring and autumn because of the way flowers and the leaves frame these temples. It's absolutely stunning, but it also does get very busy during those times of the year. On the other hand, places like Osaka are going to be fun all year round because they are a big city and there's just a lot of things happening at every time of the year. Also, places like Hakodateyama in Shiga Prefecture, during the winter it's going to be somewhere you can go skiing, but going in the summer you'll be able to enjoy all the beautiful flowers and activities that they have out there. So obviously if you're planning on going for the activities or the giant swing in the colder months, you're not going to be able to enter because they're probably in a transition period. So things like that, you're definitely going to want to be considering and checking the websites for updates. Number 8, getting around. Japan has a fantastic public transport system, and you'll most likely be using a lot of trains and some buses to get around. In which case, I definitely recommend getting an IC card and a digital IC card if you have an iPhone. If you need a refresher, you can jump back to this timestamp on how to get a digital IC card on your phone. Japanese train stations, especially in the major cities, will also have signage in English, as well as a lot of images directing you to where all the bus stops and taxi ranks are and any nearby attractions. You'll also find that the train lines are color coordinated, which is very, very useful to help you find which train line you need to get to. Train stations also have coin lockers where you can leave any luggage you have for the day. They range in price from 100 yen to maybe about 800 yen, depending on the size of your luggage. Also, Google Maps is fantastic in Japan. You put in wherever you need to go from A to B, and it will tell you which train to take, which carriage to get on at, and which exit to take, as well as any accessibility information. It's so helpful. But you also have some other options on how to get around in Japan. For example, the Shinkansen. I definitely recommend taking the Shinkansen at least one. It is a pretty amazing experience. In terms of whether you want to be getting a JR pass or not, that's really going to be depending on the type of trip and how often you're going to be using it. You can use something called a JR pass calculator to put in the trips that you plan on taking by Shinkansen to see if getting a JR pass would pay off for you. Otherwise, just purchase individual Shinkansen tickets. But if you are taking the Shinkansen, I highly recommend getting an ekiben, which are these little bento boxes that are sold at the Shinkansen stations. They're different station to station because they use local ingredients and local specialties unique to that region. So definitely grab one when you are hopping on the Shinkansen. Another thing to note, if you are taking the Shinkansen, there is not much room for large suitcases. If you do have a big suitcase, you're going to need to reserve a seat that has space to store it behind you. There's only a few per carriage. Alternatively, take a smaller suitcase so you can put it above your seat, or send your suitcase. A lot of hotels will provide services where they can send your suitcase from one hotel to another. Alternatively, convenience stores can also do this, but I'm not sure about the fees for that. I would also recommend flying domestically. It is an amazing experience. The domestic airports are fantastic. So that's definitely something to consider instead of taking the Shinkansen, or if you've got a really big trip from, for example, Fukuoka to Tokyo. Number 9, food. Getting to eat lots of authentic Japanese food can be one of the most exciting parts about an upcoming trip to Japan. But there's a few things to note before you go. It's pretty normal to line up for restaurants in Japan, especially at smaller local run restaurants with a high turnover rate, such as ramen stores. If there's a line, it's generally considered good. If you do have a restaurant that you want to visit, check on Google Maps whether you can reserve or not. And if you can, I definitely recommend you do, just so you make sure you don't miss out. I get a lot of questions regarding how accommodating Japan is to dietary restrictions, and it's really going to depend on the restaurant that you go to. Making changes to the menu is not as common here, and it can cause a bit of confusion among the staff. A lot of the times, chain restaurants will have dietary information either on their menu or on their website, and higher end restaurants or like hotel restaurants will generally be able to accommodate better to dietary restrictions than, say, smaller local run businesses. I do recommend learning how to say or explain your dietary restriction, or at least writing it down on a piece of paper, and then you can just hand that over to the staff at the restaurant. Something really fun about the food scene in Japan is that each area you go to will have its own delicacy or gourmet dish, and I highly recommend checking them out when you go and visit. For example, Osaka has takoyaki, which are those octopus balls, or okonomiyaki, the savory pancake, or kushikatsu, which are deep fried skewers. Some other ones include matcha from the city of Uji in Kyoto, tonkotsu ramen in Fukuoka, and monjayaki in Tokyo. Another thing you might find in Japan is that fruit is quite sweet and of a very high quality, but it can also be a lot more expensive than other places. Fruits are often given as gifts in Japan, but if you're up for it, definitely give some a try. I've had some of the best strawberries, grapes, and mangoes I've had in my life here in Japan. And finally, for all my North American friends, no tipping in Japan. Number 10, the accommodation in Japan. You've got a few different options in terms of accommodation in Japan, including hotels, Airbnbs, and the ryokan that I mentioned previously. Personally, I travel mostly using hotels because they are just easy and convenient to book. When you are booking your accommodation, I highly recommend booking as close to a station as possible. It just makes life so much easier when you're lugging around a suitcase, but also just so much easier for exploring the city. Another thing to note is that hotels in Japan are quite small, but they are very clean. Prices are going to fluctuate greatly depending on which city and the time of the year that you're visiting. It's really hard to give an estimated price, but I'll give you an example. When I went to Tokyo recently in December 2024, I stayed in a business hotel in Shinjuku for $150 a night, and then a capsule hotel in the same area for $80. Anyway, that's my top 10 things to know before coming to Japan. I hope that's answered some of your questions, but if you have any other ones or if you have anything else you would like me to cover in another video, let me know in the comments down below. If you liked this video, definitely give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you like this kind of content. I make videos about Japan travel and experiencing the culture. And don't forget to check out Airalo. If you're thinking about getting an eSIM, you can use my code SUNNY to get an extra $3 off. For more details, check out the QR code on the screen or through the link in the description below. But yeah, thanks for watching and all the best for your Japan planning.